Welcome to Being You, an SPH Productions presentation. My name is Shane Hodges, licensed professional counselor and author of It's Time to Be You, How to Become Your Most Authentic Self. Today's guest is David Kugler, co-host of the Call Me Limbo podcast and self-proclaimed anti-capitalist, pro-liberation HR consultant. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Our first segment is called I'm Just Me.
Okay.
We each get 30 seconds to ask each other as many rapid fire questions as we can and just see what kind of answers come forth. We flipped a coin beforehand and I will go first. A smell you hate.
My cat's litter.
Your pet's name.
Phoebe.
Yeah. Favorite arcade game.
Evil.
Top or bottom.
Side.
Favorite color.
Navy blue.
Okay. What do you want for Christmas?
Help on a down payment for a new car.
Worst vacation to date.
Ooh. Vacations. Yeah.
Well, that's just over 30 seconds. I think we got to 7.
Great.
All right.
Oh my God.
You were
For you, a night at the club or a solo night at home?
home.
Sushi or a steak dinner?
Ooh, steak dinner probably.
Reading, writing, or arithmetic?
Yeah.
Your biggest dream or aspiration?
Ooh, to be myself.
Ooh. Your favorite scent?
Fresh rain.
Your favorite physical feature?
Ooh, my butt.
A celebrity you want to meet?
Paid. Oh, that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
I can't count that. Maybe I think I
Okay.
think maybe 7.
All right. Let's get to our segment. What's your deal? Where we
Okay.
get to learn a little bit more about what you do. Let's start with the podcast. You mentioned you are co-host of a podcast called Call Me Limbo.
Yep.
How do you decide to start that podcast?
Not only am I a co-host, you have also been a guest on Call Me
Yeah.
Limbo. So shameless plug, go check out the Call Me Limbo episode.
Absolutely.
Call Me Authentic or Living My Authentic Life with Shane Hodges.
Wow.
Great episode. My friend Jay and I, a couple of years ago, decided that we wanted to channel our political energy into something that felt productive. And we decided we're like, yes. We were talking on the phone one night and I said to him, I am so tired of the Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high. I want to get in the mud. I want to throw some. I'm taking the moral high ground. We got to play the same game as our opponent. And so my friend Day on the phone, he said, you know what? When they go low, we go lower. So Call Me Limbo. And I said, that's the name of the podcast. Call Me Limbo. Wow. So that was the origin story. We probably 6 months rehearsing and practicing and coming up with ideas. We were trying to make it perfect. Okay. It prevented us from putting any content out. But we shared an episode that we had created with a few trusted friends. One of them was like, oh my God, this is great. And instead of giving us feedback, the feedback was posting the link to her thousands of Twitter followers saying, go check out my friend's podcast. At that point, we were using made up pin names. Day was going by Limbo and I was going by Yimby. So it's the only episode where we don't use our real names. We were playing characters because we didn't think we could show up as ourselves. We felt like we had to perform.
Wow.
We were trying to perfect something that we were new at. And
I understand this. You guys were not the ones that pushed the button to put it out.
Not the first one, no. So our friend just put it out. And so my first thought was, oh no. And then my second thought was like, all right, I guess we're doing this. And it took us probably about a month before we created another episode and put it out, because we were so focused on this idea of perfection. And now I've realized we can get the illusion of perfection through a good edit. It's come a long way from the beginning. We've created 90 episodes now at this point. We've had listeners in 62 countries, which I'm really, really proud of. Thanks. I also have even bigger aspirations. This year, we were able to go to the March on the Democratic National Convention as part of the podcast and cover it. We were in Chicago. And so our goal is to continue to not necessarily just comment or talk about the news, but create the news through interviews and be the change that we wish to see in the world.
I have a question about when you decided to do this. What was your hope in terms of what it would be? What were you wanting to get out there, get across?
It just felt like we wanted to do something.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to inspire action in others. Right now, the theme of season 5 is a lot about educate and empower. We've been doing that by bringing on guests and having conversations. For us, it's a way to inspire action, whether it's thinking about something, thinking about public policy in a different way, or literally even as simple as say hello to your neighbor. It doesn't have to be hard. We can create a kinder world by holding the door open for someone, saying hello to someone. Our purpose in this was to model tough conversations because Day and I generally politically are pretty aligned, but we approach things very differently. I think having conversations about how we approach these big questions, these big conversations, these big problems, what can we do to solve them? I tend to be like, burn it all down. He tends to be, let's read a think piece about this. And where can we find something in the middle?
Yeah, I appreciate that. You're also self-employed.
Yeah.
And do other work. How does that tie in to what you have been doing and or want to do with the podcast?
So we started the podcast first before I became full-time self-employed. And I was like, oh, this feels really neat. Like being able to have complete creative control over this entire business with, well, of course, with my friend and business partner. I had an LLC, David Kugler Consulting, for about 4 years. I just had it registered, but I never did anything with it. It finally came a time where I was having all these conversations with a bunch of small business owners about how cool and empowering it was to see them be able to set the value of their own labor and like their service that they provide, or even the good that they sell. They set the price. They determine the hours that they work. They determine what they want to wear to work. They also own the full value of their means of production. If they don't work, they don't get paid. But if you do work, you get the full value of your said amount of labor. For me, that felt really empowering, especially having to operate in this system of capitalism, because I need to eat and I need to keep a roof over my head. So as much as I like to say my dream job is early retirement, I don't have to work. So I do this now, and I've been blown away too about how I've been able to incorporate. I feel like my life over the last year since I've been full-time self-employed is so much richer. And I don't mean that financially, right? I go to Zumba twice a week now on Friday mornings at 9:45 when normally I would be at work. I start my weeks with therapy every week at 9:30, and I consider that work because I'm working on myself. And so like, I love that I'm able to structure my life around my own needs, because when I'm showing up for myself and when I am meeting my own needs, it's so much easier for me to show up for other people and help them meet their needs.
I appreciate when you said it feels so much richer, and I don't mean financially. The words we use, the definitions we have behind words, they're so important because, richer, we do tend to go to that place of money and finances. But the way you just described it, it has very little to actually do with a lot of that.
Yeah. Also do bookkeeping and payroll. I have insight into people's financial information. I have access to their bank account. I tell a lot of clients, these are just numbers. We're the ones that assign the value to it. And for me, time is the most valuable currency. We can't get it back, right? We can trade time, but we can't get back our time. Always get a second job if we need to. We can always work an extra hour if we need to. We can always make more of those numbers that we call money, but we can't get back our time. I wish that I would have realized that sooner, because I'm 38. I would say midlife, because the average life expectancy is around 76. Maybe I'm having an existential midlife crisis, but if anything, it's actually helped put a lot of things into perspective about what is really important. And again, making my life richer.
And I wanted to ask, in terms of your employment, you mentioned clients. Who do you work with? Who are your clients?
I offer fractional human resource services. A lot of small businesses don't need a full-time human resources person. They need an HR resource. I'm happy to be that resource. I do a lot of advising and working with business owners to say, hey, what kind of business owner do you want to be? Let's create an employee handbook together because you need one to reduce your legal liability. But what's in that handbook? Is the dress code spelled out exactly, or is it dress what makes you feel comfortable and most productive? Stuff like that.
Well, with regard to the podcast, your self-employment, but also your political advocacy,
Yeah.
where do you think that passion started or came from?
I've always been political. Growing up gay in rural Western Nebraska.
Okay.
Being authentic, Shane, so I figured I would just come out and say, you're the first person to ever hear it. So, exclusive. Yeah.
Are they here? Exclusive?
I'm gay. Yeah, growing up gay in rural Western Nebraska, I was made to feel othered and excluded. And I know what that feels like, to feel like who you are as part of your identity is not worthy of belonging. And I never want to create that environment for anyone. When I was a people manager working in corporate America, my entire focus was to create environments where people felt like they could show up to work authentically as themselves. And that showed up in having the lowest turnover rates consistently in the districts that I was leading. I think that when your identity is political, it's easy to live a political life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when I think about where I grew up, I wanted to get out of there as fast as I could. I learned a lot about the value of community in Nebraska. And I've also learned that I didn't necessarily want to be part of it. I knew that there was a community out there for me, and I'm the founder here in Dice. Yeah, and I love my community here. This is home. And it's taken a while to find it.
Yeah, I think that you made a very interesting point that community is important, and it's important to find the right community.
Yes.
Community that works for you.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to get a little bit more personal. Segment of who are you?
Okay.
More about David. So, what do you say you consider to be your greatest accomplishment?
You know, something that I've been working through with my own therapist right now is a lot of times I linked my accomplishment, my success, my identity to awards or external validation. So I would have previously probably said my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, my professional in human resources certification, my senior professional in human resources certification, the Bravo Award that I received at Starbucks for
You've gotten a lot of words.
right. Duh. Yeah. The Friend of Phoebe Award for Call Me Limbo for exceptional podcasts. Don't get me wrong. I am motivated by external validation. But for me, the greatest success that I think I have found or that I've achieved is probably in this last year. And I say a lot where the only thing I'm chasing is self-actualization. I want to be the best version of myself for that little boy from Nebraska.
Okay. Do you believe that self-actualization can be consistent, continuous?
I think it looks differently depending upon our stages of life. When I was working in corporate America, self-actualization looked like being a district manager. Now, my self-actualization goal is to appear on stage at Radio City Music Hall. So yeah, for me, that's an external achievement. But for me, the internal success has been honoring the little boy who wanted to become a game show host for the president.
And that was going to be my next question is, let's think back to 12-year-old David. What would you say to him?
First of all, say that I'm really proud of you. And that it does get better. It doesn't necessarily always get easier, but it does get better.
I get that.
There is work involved, and there's a lot of self-work, and there's a lot of work on relationships, and you will see a lot of the world, and you're really, really lucky. Like, you will be very, very lucky. And then you will find your people. And when I think about little David from Nebraska, who on the Star Student Board in fourth grade wanted to be a game show host for the president, now that I'm doing the podcast where I get to entertain and I get to talk about politics, I get to do both of these things. And that to me feels like self-actualization. It feels like I'm living a dream. And that to me is something that I would love for everyone to experience. And yes, sometimes it does take a little bit of financial means to get started. And it also just takes a desire to start. It takes courage to start, and it takes courage to be able to make mistakes.
Your comment about wanting others to experience self-actualization, I talk about it as well in my book with my clients. I would love for everyone to be able to experience being authentic because it's so liberating. Which leads us into the wow segment.
Yes.
Words of wisdom. What would your words of wisdom be to our listeners, viewers, followers in regard to being authentic, how to be authentic, challenges around being authentic?
I have two, if that's okay. If the overachiever is the success, I've been to the end.
Yeah.
So the first one is something that my friend Day, who I co-host the podcast with, says: we're all just paid actors. Some of us get paid more depending on our role. And I think a lot about that. Love is performative. We're all just performing a character and doing the best job we can. So that's the first one. The second one is capitalism is a game and we're all just players. We operate inside this system that tends to be pretty oppressive. It tends to extract a lot of sense of self from people when you are just doing a job in order to have your basic physiological needs met. So when I think I have to operate in this system, how can I operate in a way that feels liberatory? I set myself up as a corporation because I want to legally pay less in taxes. Again, legality and ethics are not necessarily equals in this country. So in my mind, if we all collectively were to say, I'm going to own my own means of production, I'm going to be the one that says what my value is. If we all collectively start to do that, whether it's in the form of self-employment, like I'm doing or like you're doing, where we're individual contributors and owning our own means of production that way, or setting up worker co-ops where every worker has ownership in the business. It would help with retention. It would help with investments. We're still operating within this capitalist framework, but it feels more liberatory.
Taking more control.
That feels great. I want everybody to experience that.
So in terms of your podcast, your professional services, how can people, our followers, viewers, find you, contact you, get information about you?
People can stream the podcast. It's pretty much on any podcasting platform, or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Apple or Amazon Music, YouTube, iHeartRadio, any of those. You can also follow us on Instagram at Call Me Limbo Pod, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, or Thread. You can also become a Patreon member, patreon.com/Call Me Limbo Pod. That supports us financially, which is very helpful. And then in terms of HR work, you can email me, david@davidkugler.com.
Well, thank you so much for that. It's been very entertaining and fun. Again, my name is Shane Hodges. This is my book, It's Time to Be You, How to Become Your Most Authentic Self. You can find me at DenverGuy76 on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn. The book is available on Amazon, SPHproductions.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and other platforms as well. Get your copy today and be yourself, guys. Thank you all for joining. Have a great day.
And we're clear.